Hi, this is an unboxing and setup guide of the Huawei N5368X 5G outdoor router. In the box you'll get a leaflet in terms of how to set it up. Maybe your internet service provider will put their information inside the package. Here is the unit. Right, in the box you get quite a lot of accessories, and I'm going to quickly walk through these accessories one by one. Now first is the power supply. Now here is your power supply, and it comes with your country specific cable. You're going to take the 2-pin adapter and you're going to plug it in there. It's got a power switch there, and you plug this into your electricity. What this is a power over LAN connection, which means that whichever cable you use, whether you use the short one or the long outdoor one, it's going to provide your outdoor unit with power. So say for example, you're installing this indoors, which I don't recommend. There you go, you're going to put it there. It says the WAN power, so that goes into there, and this goes to your device. Right, inside there you'll see an Ethernet port, and that slots in like that, and that would be an indoor connection. If you are going to be installing this indoors, then you'll be using this plate. Now, if you look at the bottom here, it's got these crevices and so forth. This is a heatsink. So this is probably aluminium, and it needs to be off the table, meaning it mustn't sit on the surface directly. And that's why you use this plate, which provides a little standoff distance. So that slides on the side here. So as you can see at the back of this plate, there are raised pins there, and there are spaces there. So what happens is you push it into the bigger area, and you have to press down because it is spring loaded. There you can see there's little leaf springs there, and you press down, and now what you do is you press up, and you can see how that slots in place. As I said, if this is going to be put on a surface, then you can see there's a gap there that is a heat gap, allowing the cable to also have space to travel there, and that sits like that. If you want to, you can also thread the cable via the hole at the back there. It makes it look a little bit neater. Now for the home or small office user, you might be familiar with these smaller routers, and you can see there's like 280 grams. So don't get alarmed when you see this one at just under 1.5 kilograms. Right, now if you're going to be connecting this outdoors, I'm going to show you what all these items are for. The first thing you want to do is take off this bracket. So in order to do that, I just put my finger there and press down at the same time, and you can see that this bracket comes off. Right, so I'm going to remove this Ethernet cable. There it's out, and now I'm going to show you what to do if you're going to be using this outdoors. Right, now in terms of an outdoor setup, you've got two options. The one is wall mount and the other is pole mount. Now I'm going to briefly walk you through both these options. Now the first thing you'll need to do is look at this bracket. Now can you see that it's also got these raised, these like nipples here, and that also has to slot in similarly to how you did the other bracket. Now can you see how that holds it in place? Now if you want to remove this bracket, you have to lift that and slide that out as follows. So there you can see the wall mount bracket. Now I'll show you how you do that. You'll need a drill if you're going to be putting it into a brick wall, for example, and you will see these wall plugs. This means you have to drill these 4 expanding bolts into the wall, and what happens is you'll tighten it like this times 4, and once that's in the wall, you will just slot this on, and it will hold down your 5G device on the wall. Now, if you have a pole or a mast or an aerial at your business or your home, maybe this is the pole. You can also do a pole mount installation, and that's what these hose clamps are for. So what you would do is you would still put this bracket on the 5G device. Then you'll open up this clamp, you thread it through these slots. Right, so that is how the hose clamps slide through those slots over there. Right, then what you'll do is you'll tighten this using an Allen key that happens to be a size 6. You tighten this, and this will tighten onto the pole, and then you can mount your 5G device on a pole. Right, in terms of the outdoor setup, you'll get one of these PG glands. I think in the box it comes like that. So you'll need to open this part here. You take that off, and what's going to happen is you're going to insert that in there, and then there's a rubber seal there to stop any water. And if you have a look there, there's also a rubber there that tightens and compresses onto this wire, stopping any moisture from getting into the unit. So what you want to do is, in order to install this, first open it up, and then turn this quite tightly. Do not cross thread it. This thing should go in very easily. If you're finding that it's difficult to get this in, it means you're cross threading it. You're going to destroy this gland. So you're going to do it like this. Right, then you're going to make it tight. Once it's tight, now you can put the Ethernet cable, feed it in there. Just guide it with your finger. If it's not going in, Right, now put this rubber here. If you were turning it while the back of the gland was inserted, you would have twisted and possibly torn this Ethernet cable. Now you can put the gland in there, press it like that, and now you can tighten this without worrying that you're going to be damaging anything. So now make that fairly tight. You don't have to go to town here, but you can just make it fairly tight, and there you can see it's compressed. There you can see the rubber is swelling. That's enough. That already tells me it's watertight. Now, if you're wondering what this is a cable roll, because this 5G device should be installed in an outdoor location. Well, that will give you the best signal. So this is why you've got so much wire here. Therefore, you'll need quite a bit of cable to get to your switch or your internal network. Now, this cable does not appear to be waterproof, UV protected. So if it was me, I would be replacing this with a UV water protected cable, especially if it's going to run along a wall or things like that. While they did supply you with this roll, I think it's more for internal, maybe running inside a roof. Now, you can get Cat5e or Cat6 cable that is UV protected, and I'm sure this is partly why they gave you this additional gland. So if you have a look at this gland, you can see that this one has got a round fitting, while the one that's pre-wired for you is actually got a flat fitting. If you are going to be running an extra long cable, then you will have to use your own cable. So what you'll have to do is you would put that in there, and then you follow the same procedures, and you'll tighten this until it squashes onto that cable. But the only thing is you'll have to make your own RJ45, so you'll have to then go and get one of these connectors and make your own, which means you'll have to crimp it. And just a word of advice, not all UTP cable is the same. If I have a look at this is generic cable. And if you look at it, you'll see that while it looks like it's copper, on the outside it's the copper color. But if you cut through it, I can actually see that it is silver, so it's actually aluminium. So rather, if you are going to be doing this and running long cable runs, please use copper cable. And just a note, this is 28 AWG, and if possible, try use 26 AWG. As you can see here, I've got the sizing guide at 26 if you're going to do longer runs. The lower the number, the thicker the cable. And if you're interested, you see it says 19 volts DC at 1.1 amps. Obviously, if you have a very long cable run or you run an inferior cable, you're going to initiate a volt drop, and your 5G device is not going to be able to reach its maximum power output. And if it cannot reach its maximum power output, you're not going to get your best signal strength. Right, moving on. Right, you might be wondering, where do you put the SIM card? Well, if this came from the Rain network, then they've already pre-installed the SIM card, but I'll just show you how to get the SIM card in and out if you do wish to. It's a star screwdriver, and I just open the back there. It is a watertight seal. As you can see, there's a rubber there. Now, if you have a look inside there, I'm going to zoom in for you. You can see there's a reset point there. There's your nano SIM card, and it's the Rain SIM card at the moment. Can you see that says LAN? So you've got another Ethernet port there. Just keeping in mind, this says power/LAN. That just says LAN. The on/off of the Wi-Fi, so you can manually toggle the Wi-Fi on or off. So you can actually switch the other radio transmitter off. Okay, so in terms of connecting this up, so I've plugged it in, I've switched it on. You've got a little green LED there telling me it's on. I've used the cables, there we go. And now you can immediately see you'll get some LEDs shining on the front of this 5G device. Now I'm going to briefly tell you about these LEDs. Now you see the green one there is telling you the Wi-Fi is enabled and it's on and it's working. Now if you have a look here, you've got a 4G, there's a green light there, and a 5G is a green light there. It means that it can lock onto that frequency band. Now sometimes this 5G one might go blue. Blue meaning that you've got a low signal strength. It doesn't mean that you're not getting 5G signal. It just means that the signal is not as good as it should be. So if you're getting green and green, you're good to go. That means your device is having a good enough signal strength. Now later in the video, I'll show you the login, and I'll show you how you can see the signal strength via the GUI. You can see there, look at that. The green light has actually disappeared, which means that I'm not getting 5G signal now at all here. And having done lots of tests at this particular location, I found that this does not like to be inside. This is an outdoor device in terms of my location, so I suggest you try different locations before you finally set this up, and I'll go through that step by step how to do that. Now while we're at this point in the video, some people may wonder, how noisy is this? Now I've got my dB meter here, and obviously it's pretty useless because this is extremely quiet. I'm not hearing any clicking and fan noise, and I will open this up for you just to show you what's inside. However, I am hearing a very high-pitched squeal. Now a lot of electronic devices make that, even power supplies make that. It sounds like a but very, very soft. So I'm not going to say this is completely quiet. There is a slight noise, and there's also a slight noise from your electrical noise. Now that noise is no more than the noise that you get from your cell phone charger. So it's not like I'm singling this device out. I'm just giving you the facts. Now, if for some reason you do need to open this device up, maybe this was installed on a pole and it fell off, or it cracked and you dropped it and you need to get a new one of these plastic covers, well, I'll just show you how to open it up, but obviously I don't recommend you do this. Rather just contact the service provider. There's a couple of screws there. It's a T20 and you just unscrew there, and I'll just show you what it looks like inside if you're interested. Right, you're gently sliding this out, and there is your cellular radio. Look at all those antennas inside, and if you're wondering where the status update, those LEDs, they're there are the LEDs. Obviously the CPU and so forth is on this main board over here. Just having a look at the heatsink here. As I said earlier, this thing needs airflow. That's why I don't put this in a corner of a cupboard where it cannot get air. Remember, this is a radiating device. It's got a power output, and this thing should have some air around here so that it can keep this device running cooler. When you're putting the top on, just don't let the rubber seal come out of its recess here. Remember, this is IP rated. Right, when you are reinstalling this, this only goes one way. And as you can see, the LEDs align with this circuit board here, and there are the LEDs on the actual printed board over there. And now just gently push that in so that it can keep that watertight seal. There we go. And now I can put the screws back in. Right, if you want to get started with this just in an internal installation, we'll go plug this into your power outlet, and over there you're going to connect an Ethernet cable from that Ethernet port to your local network. So if you have a switch in your home or office, you'll be connecting from there to your switch. Right, I'm now going to walk you through a setup, a basic setup, and then I'm going to do an installation on a pole. Now, I'm not going to be setting this up with two routers, which means it's just going to be this unit for the home office. I will post videos later on explaining how to do IP pass-through and RIP routing in order to have cascaded routers in your office for different people getting different access to this main 5G device. Right, starting with the most simple setup. Okay, as I said to you, you're going to plug that in. You don't have to use this long cable, as I said, as long as you use high quality cable to the 5G device. And now, simple as this, I just plug it into the Ethernet port of my laptop, and that's your most basic setup. Now, this is the physical setup. I'll still walk you through the logical or the software setup, and I'll do that shortly. But I'm first going to show you the different orientations in terms of laptop, switches, and also Wi-Fi. Now, you do not necessarily have to have this thing cabled to your laptop. You can just directly connect to it via the Wi-Fi. Now, as you can see, the Wi-Fi is on, and that's actually very easy. But in order to set this up with a RAIN network, they highly recommend that you do it with Ethernet cabling. And there's a reason for that is the distance between your laptop and the 5G device is very important. If you're going to connect from here to here, obviously it's going to have a very good Wi-Fi link. But if this is going to be on top of your roof, and this is going to be in some office on a ground floor, well, then your Wi-Fi is going to be very poor, if not non-existent. So that means that your Wi-Fi link is going to be poor, and you're going to think it's the 5G device, but actually it's just the link between here and there rather than the 5G device and the service provider. So best practice is when you are setting this up, use an Ethernet patch cable. Now, once it's set up, and I will show you how to set this up, you can just now run this with Wi-Fi, and you can connect many clients to the 5G device just with Wi-Fi. So you no longer have to be bound by the hardwired cables. Obviously, for best experience, use the Ethernet cable, keeping in mind that most people's wireless devices are not operating at this full speed. And if you're going to get 600 megabits per second on something like this, you ain't going to get that through the air with your laptop in terms of Wi-Fi. So that's another reason why you would want an Ethernet connection. However, if you've got a good Wi-Fi link and you have a modern laptop and a computer with a Wi-Fi dongle that has 300 megabit per second spec, you will get some decent throughput as long as there aren't a lot of users around you. Now, I'm not going to get into that detail. You're welcome to watch my other videos in terms of how to set up computer networks. There's a playlist. All right, so moving on. Now, a lot of people who are purchasing the RAIN device are maybe home users or small office users, and they've got these type of ADSL or LTE routers. This one's very popular, the B315, traditionally sold from Telkom. Now, what would happen is you have these 4G devices and you'd be upgrading to maybe the RAIN. Well, that's pretty simple. All you need to do is unplug your 4G device or your router that's currently at your business, and then just plug in your 5G router. So if this was your setup, you had one of these routers, then all you'd have to do is literally unplug it from that and plug it into that port over there. Remember that is your LAN port, and now you've got access to your RAIN, your 5G device. I will still go through the software setup. So this would be a very basic setup. Now, what happens if your network had more than one laptop? Maybe you had a desktop, a TV, maybe you're running Netflix into your TV and whatever, and some Wi-Fi points, and you're actually using these additional ports at the back of this router. Well, then you would have to go and buy a network switch, because the 5G device only has one Ethernet port. Well, there is one internally there, but you're only going to use the one. So you would then need an Ethernet switch to give you connectivity. Now, this is quite a contentious issue, because you'll need to look at a high-end Ethernet switch, for the reason that the whole point of the 5G device is that it gives you high bandwidth. Now, if you look at these ports at the back here, and here's a sister router, which is quite similar. These are in competition to each other. This is the TP-Link and this is the Huawei. Now, what's interesting about these ports at the back is they are only 10100. What does 10100 mean? You only can get 100 megabits per second. Now, that would be silly to buy a 5G device and then connect it via these little ports here, 10100, because the whole point of the 5G device is you can get more than 200 megabits per second. So this makes these ports at the back of these routers are actually redundant. And you might even have one of these standalone switches. Also an issue, you must make sure these are gigabit ports. Now, it's not like it's not going to work. It'll still work, but your throughput will be much lower if you're using a smaller bandwidth switch, such as something like this. These are 10100s, which means each one of these ports is only going to give me 100 megabits per second. So that means if I'm connected like this, there's my laptop, there's my 5G device, and maybe 5 other people are also connected to this little switch. The throughput's going to be pretty poor, because while the 5G device over there can give you well over 200 megabits per second, you are now having a bottleneck sitting here. Now, moving to a larger setup in your network, maybe your small office, you might have some of these. For example, this is a Pro Curve. This happens to be power over Ethernet, which means you can actually get power out of these ports as well, which is what this is for. It's to give you power. So a switch like this already has power. Anyway, never mind that. So in a network like this, where you've got lots of people, make sure that it is a gigabit switch. For example, every single one of these ports is gigabit. So that means that the bandwidth per port is actually faster than the maximum rate of the 5G device. So that means this thing is not going to be a bottleneck. You can have your 24 users all connected on this network while still using that 5G device. So in such a case, it's quite simple. You'll just plug it into any port over there, and here would be your laptops, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And if you wanted wireless across your entire bottom floor of your business, for example, you could get some access points, and they could be plugged into some of these ports, providing people with wireless access at a high bandwidth. Keeping in mind that the 5G device also gives you wireless access, but remember that this 5G device loves to be outside. So in a short while, you're going to see me connect that on a roof, and then I have a lot of users who just cannot get access to it because the range is too far away. In that case, maybe some of your old routers, you could turn them into access points, or maybe just go and buy a few access points to make sure you still have Wi-Fi in your home office. Now, in a more advanced setup, which I'm not going to go into detail with in this video, you might already have a dedicated router and your whole network set up, and you don't feel like going and redoing all the IP addresses to different ranges. Remember, this uses 192.168, and it's almost fixed at that range. Maybe you're using a 10 range, and you don't want to go and redo all the routing and VLANs in your network. So what you could do is you could set a rule on that to connect to your main router, and that just gives you access to the internet. Therefore, you're not actually going to make any changes to your internal network. All you're going to do is make the final router point to that as the gateway. Right, if that's getting too complicated, don't worry. That's where I'm leaving it. I'm now going to demonstrate how to set up the 5G device according to the RAIN website and the steps that they wish you to follow. Right, in this part of the video, I'm going to go through the network configuration. Right, to access the device, you'll have to launch a web browser. There you see I've got Firefox. You can use Internet Explorer, Opera. Any web browser is fine. So I go to 192.168.8.1. That is the address of the CPE device. Right, now I just want to demonstrate how I did that. Just type 192.168.8.1. Doesn't matter which web browser you use. You can use Google Chrome. It doesn't matter. You can see I'm using Microsoft Edge just to show you. Right, brings me to the same screen. Now, this is the default address, which means you need to be in the same address range. Now, in my case, it just worked. Now, in your case, it may not. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to settings. Now this is based on a Windows PC. Now if you're connecting via Ethernet, you'll have to go to change adapter settings and that'll bring up this window. Now you can see it says there Ethernet network 2. This is connected. I've plugged in the 5G device into a switch and there I've got my properties and there you can see it says internet protocol and I need to go and look at my IP address. Now can you see mine says obtain IP address automatically. So what has happened is the 5G device has actually allocated me an IP address automatically. But in many cases, there may be a conflict or a problem at this step. So what I recommend you do is first check what your IP address is. So what you can do is you can say CMD, you press enter and you say IP config and you will see there's an address. You can see that I'm currently 192.168.8.2. That means that the 5G router gave me an address already and that is why I can connect to it, 192.168.8.2. So if you do not get an address, or maybe there is a router on the network or a DHCP server on your network, basically if there's another computer on the network giving you an IP address, you will now need to override that in order to access the CPE device, the 5G router. So you will need to put in manually the address 192.168.8. I'll just make it 3 just for argument's sake. And the default gateway is the address of the Huawei CPE device. So there we go, 192.168.8.1. That is the address of the router, the device that's going to give you access to the internet. So there we go, that's called the default gateway. And now I just say, okay, and automatically you should now be given access to that device. So if I come here and I go again, you can see that it will still allow me to access the login page. And now just a few points here. If you had to make your own IP address, for example, maybe you gave yourself 8.10 and then you were accessing the router manually. If you're not getting internet connectivity, you can just put in the gateway address over here to force some internet connectivity. Now I'm going to continue using the Ethernet setup. The default username is admin. The default password is admin. I now log in. It's going to force me to change the password immediately. So the current password is still admin. Now you must choose a new password. Notice it wants it to be 10 to 15 letters with numerals and special characters. You can set the password reminder if you wanted to force a password change every 30 days, 60 days, or never. Now it's going to log me out. And I'm going to re-log in. Now, once you're logged in, hopefully you've got these signals here. It says they see 4G. It's quite low, but I've locked on to 5G. Look at that signal, almost perfect. Now, you can actually have a look at the signal strength of your device. Now, at the bottom here, you click detail, and there you can see the signal intensity minus 85 dBm. Right, now the next step would be to activate your SIM card. Now here you can see the address. It says activate.rain.co.za. Now where did I get that from? I got it from an email which they sent to me once they delivered the package or during the process of the delivery. They sent me an email saying activate your SIM card. So I did that. It was a dead link. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't seem to work. But I think I needed to activate it while I was on the Rain network because I was activating it while I was on Telkom's network and the link just died. All right. So then I went to the website and then you got to log in. So log into the website and then once you've logged in, you should see an option to optimize your router. So once you've logged in, you'll see the list of all your devices that you've purchased from them. Now I only have one, so I can say my devices or I can just click here, view. Now it brings up this option called optimize. So you press it. Now it's very important that you type in your address if it isn't already here and then make sure it brings up a correct aerial version of your map. Confirm that this is the aerial view of where you stay. Now you'll see there's some coordinates and a blue dot. Now it's north, south, east, west. Right, so check the calibration that is correct. Now what it says, and you'll keep getting this request, it'll say move the CPE X router outside closest to the blue dot. Now, I'll just give you the summary of this because I don't want to bore you with the details. Right, so first I set it up inside, didn't really work. The speed was 0. It runs a test and it was absolutely useless. Then I put it in the corner of my property furthest away from the blue dot, and I got really good speeds. I was getting 225 megabits per second, so it was actually good. Then I moved closest to the blue dot and I put it on a wall just out of interest, and I got 120 or whatever. It was actually slower. So this blue dot is a little bit misleading, and I noticed my signal strength was worse when I went towards the blue dot. However, I then climbed up on the roof and installed it on a mast, and since I did that, my signal strength is excellent. And then when I run the test, I've actually got the highest throughput that I've had to date. So here you can see just earlier this afternoon, I got 335 megabits per second. So what you'll end up doing is you will put the CPE device in a certain place in your house or on your property or in your building, wherever it is, and then you say test the network. Then it'll give you the speed test, and what it'll do is it'll test your signal strength and speed of your data transfer. So you'll end up doing this a few times, and that is one of the reasons why I say before you go and hard mount this device, go and check different places, go with your laptop and do this over and over again until you find the right location. So all you'll do is just say test network and make sure you've put your address in. Then you'll get this screen, and this does literally take 1 to 2 minutes, if not more. So be patient when you're doing this over and over again. Then it'll say test running, and that's a good sign because you've got about 30 seconds until the test is finished. Right, now it says test done, show your result. Now I got 215 megabits per second. You can see it's much lower than the best I got this afternoon. So you'll see that this is temperamental, and it obviously depends on a lot of environmental and user conditions. You can also use your router to check the signal strength because, as I said, it is available for you to see on the router. Remember here, when you log in, it actually shows you, or over here, you can also just see. I mean, you can see my signal strength is great. All right, I'm going to quickly walk you through the Wi-Fi setup, and then I'm going to just show you the physical setup and then 1 or 2 troubleshooting tips. Okay, so once you've logged into your CPE device, you just go to wireless LAN, WLAN, and then you can just go here and you say enable, and then there should be an SSID list. And as you can see, it's already got the Huawei 5G, whatever, and you can disable these. You don't always want to advertise these SSIDs, and my advice is go and change these passwords immediately. Disable SSIDs you don't need. So here, for example, I created one, and then you're going to create your password. You just create your password, you press apply. So you do this all under wireless LAN, and you can change the power settings. If you look at advanced settings, there's an option here. You can change the bandwidth, you can do the channel separation if you want, and then there's the transmit power. And one last thing I'd like to bring to attention is here's the DHCP. And as you can see, the IP address of the CPE device is 192.168. This is kind of locked. I don't know yet how to change it. So if you find a way to change it, please post so that we can work that out. Right, so it's .8.1. You can change these octets, but unfortunately, you don't have access to that. Then you can put the DHCP server on or off. Remember, the DHCP server is Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, which means it allocates IP addresses to users as they as they plug into your network or access your Wi-Fi. So for most people, they'll have this on if they don't have other routers on their network. And then obviously you can set the range. Right, I'm not going to go into more details. I'll rather do other videos because this video is already very long. Right, so just some troubleshooting tips. I'm going to give you 2 tips. The first one is if you're looking for the user manual, good luck finding this manual. You know where it is. You press the help button on the GUI when you logged into the router, the 192.168.8.1. You press help and it will immediately link you to this user manual, which is not very complete. As you can see, in my opinion, it's a little bit vague. I know it's 50 pages, but you'll see that it's not the most descriptive user manual. The next thing is just about IP addresses once again, and then I'm going to just show you a practical installation. If, for example, you're trying to access the router and this keeps happening where it won't let you log in, you see it's going to come up with an error now. And there it says 192.168.8 is taking too long connection has timed out. So just go back and check your settings, because as I said, this is where a lot of people are going to have problems. And look at that. Can you see that this client was set up as 10.0.0.100? Maybe someone had set this up previously, and this is why it's not accessing 192.168.8.1. Can you see these are in different ranges? It would work if this was 192.168.8. anything else, but it won't work if this is, say, 10 or 191 or 140. Then it won't work. So this is why I said just make sure you've checked this. And a final thing is, if it's still not connecting, just come here and say disable and re-enable. All that does is it kind of takes your client off the network, and then it puts it back on, and then it sends a packet around the network saying, please allocate me an IP address. And that means that the CPE device, this router, will now allocate you an IP address. So right now, in this location, the best position is actually as high as possible. There's a lot of trees around here, and therefore I'm going for the height. So I'm installing it on a mast. When you're installing it on a mast, don't install it right at the top. Leave a gap. In terms of lightning protection, you use a rolling ball. So you call it a cone of protection. So leave a gap at the top so that the CPE device is not the top point of the mast. Otherwise, when lightning strikes, it'll attack the CPE first. And yes, in the night, you can see the LEDs on the face of the CPE device. All right, this brings me to the end of a very long video. Thanks for watching.